Welcome to another edition of Business Builders Podcast. Today's guest is Russell Hewes. I think you'll agree with me once you've heard it. He's got an amazing journey. And to kick it all off, Russell, welcome. Lovely to see you. How did it all start? Where did you all get going?
Firstly, thanks, Ray, for getting me on. Really appreciate the airtime. So I guess it began... I'll just give you a little quick history. Born in Kenya, moved over to the UK when I was 12. Bit of story, we were about to move over. My dad wanted me to be here for education purposes, me and my sister and my mum. Unfortunately, a month or two before we were about to move over, he passed. And my mum decided that she would honour what he wanted. And so we flew over as a family of three. Moved into our house in lovely Wimbledon Park, and that's kind of where the beginning of the journey started. So long story short, I ended up becoming an electrician through a bit of a journey. Got bullied in school a little bit, usual stuff. Kind of was a little bit lost, but the one thing that I was very clear on quite early on is I didn't want to go to university. The reason for that was I always associated a university with people who wanted to be a doctor, lawyer, accountant, and I was very clear on the fact that I didn't want to be any of those. And being quite a social person, I was worried that I'd just go over there, waste all my money, and party all the time. So I decided, nothing. But if you know yourself, it was just something that I just knew that wasn't the right path. It was,
Sure.
sometimes I feel like we have these strings or threads that pull on us, and that was a thread that when I kind of had a tug on, it made it feel very clear that wasn't the path that I was intended to be on. I went into the working world. It was great. Had various different jobs in various different sectors. So retail, worked for Phones for You, high pressure sales. Worked in PC world. I did some volunteering for a charity, Quorum in Russell Square. Worked for a suit shop. And eventually ended up at Safe Store doing storage. So all kind of linked to sales. But eventually I ended up landing on the question I asked myself was, what is a job that I can do and travel the world and always come back and earn the same amount of money, and use the skill set that I already had, which was, was quite good at maths and science from GCSE level. And one of my good friends' dad was a principal at Lambeth College. So I went and had a chat with him, and we looked at plumbing and everything else, and electrician just seemed like the perfect fit. So that's kind of how the beginning of the entrepreneur journey of how
was
I
that
ended
an
up.
apprenticeship with a large organisation, or?
Yeah, so funny enough, I was just thinking about this the other day. I feel, which we can go into later, that there is a bit potentially like a recession coming in building, and how I had this feeling is it reminded me of when I first became an electrician. So I went and got this apprenticeship because of my friend's dad. He managed to get me on. At the time, to get onto an apprenticeship, you needed to have someone sponsor you and have work, and no one was taking anyone on at the time. And I really offered to work for free. I offered to work for little to zero money, but just at this period of time, no one was taking on. Obviously, I was quite young, so I didn't know what a recession was or had any idea about that. And the reason why I liken it to now is because I'm getting so many phone calls from young men and women who are looking for an opportunity, and I'm kind of oversubscribed. And
Does the government still, obviously when I had my companies, it was a long time ago and the landscape's changed. Does the government give much incentive now for apprenticeships?
The government does do some incentives towards companies taking on apprentices, but I don't think they are super beneficial to companies. So we can go back and to the story, but talking about apprenticeships, I've always been an advocate for hiring and giving opportunities for apprentices.
Yeah.
But any business owner who has done it in the past will know that in the beginning, you think you take on a young individual, and normally you're looking at like a minimum of 3 to 5 year journey.
Yeah.
And so there is an exchange that is expected. You're going to give up your time, energy, and resources to take on this young person and hopefully guide and influence them to learn the skill sets to join your company. And in the beginning, it's lopsided towards the company giving out more than the other way around. Obviously, what you need from the apprentice is someone who's got the attributes, who wants to obviously be
mindset.
Yeah, the mindset, really important. But then at some point that balance changes, right? So suddenly they start picking up the skills you hope. They start picking up the mentality, the mindset, and they start actually being able to give back in terms of generating and increasing the revenue that they bring in. And so what generally happens is, like, roughly around, depending how good they are, year 1.5 years, they start to give back. And so that the business finally starts getting back that initial 1 to 2 year investment that they put in. But more often than not, the mindset of young people today is that, they expect their money to raise quite quickly. People are looking for pay rises like every 6 months or every year. The cost of living is quite high, arguably, for everyone. So they're expecting that reward a lot quicker. And that's not to say that the good ones can't get it if they become an asset to the company. But in my experience, it normally takes 2 to 3 years before the company starts recuperating some of those initial investments that they're put in. And most young people are just not willing to wait or put in the effort or time.
It's also interesting, though, with yourself. I do it for nothing. Give me, I do it on a lower wage. You don't hear that, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Socially, trends have changed.
Yes.
Attitudes have changed.
So going back to that, eventually I'm going to college 1 day a week. I've got no one who's hiring me, and so I was like, God, what am I going to do? So I luckily, through football, there was a guy named Matt Cannon, was a referee. He owned a construction company, and I knew him quite well from football socials. And I asked if I could be a labourer on site. £40 a day at the time. I'm sure there's older people who worked for like tuppence or £10 or whatever, but £40 at the time. I had a car. I'd already moved out of my mum's place. It was it was nothing. Wouldn't even cover the petrol getting there. So I lived in Tooting at the time and having to travel to Esher to a site. But the mindset was, I'm going to wait till an electrical firm comes onto this project. And when they do, I'm going to show them how good I am and how determined I am to become an electrician, and that they will take me on. And fast forward 5-6 months of digging, carrying in the freezing cold. I remember that winter in November. It was freezing, like couldn't feel my hands, digging trenches, carrying bricks, ripping out dust. I think at even one point I was worried I'd touched asbestos. But my opportunity came. Electrical firm came on, Osborne and Collins, and I made sure that they had to take me on, and they did, and that was the beginning of my actual apprenticeship.
Oh, great. Okay, so from the apprenticeship through to the electrical side, you worked as an electrician for this particular company for how long, and how did you get? Because you started your own electrical company, is that right?
Yeah. So basically worked with them for 2 to 3 years. I really wanted to stay and work with them, but interestingly, again, I think due to the economy, I could only reference it now, having more experience as to why this happened. But firstly, they wouldn't buy my tools, so I had to ask them to buy all my tools and have the money come out of the wages. Again, another mindset thing. Yeah. Most people would just expect their tools to be bought these days. I have a lot of people who don't have tools and they expect me to buy it. And the second thing was, eventually, once you've done your full apprenticeship, you basically have to do for the layman, you have to do essentially a signing off to show your skill set with a college. And there is a cost to that most companies would cover. At the time, Osborne and Collins weren't in a position to be able to pay that outright. And for me, I felt like I was a little bit upset because I felt like I just given 3 years of hard work to my own point, and I would have expected that they believed and trusted in me enough to pay for me to do my final qualification. But he just said to me, he was worried that once I get qualified, because I was quite good, that I would either demand too much of a high wage or I would leave the company. And so he didn't want to make this, I think at the time, 3K investment to do that. So, but for me, like I felt that was a lack of trust in myself, even though I'd worked my arse off for like three years. And so he said that I would need to pay for it, and I felt a bit of disrespect.
It's a bit short-sighted.
Yeah, so very short-sighted, and this is unfortunately actually a theme that kept happening to me, where people will dangle a carrot, and because I'm so driven, determined, and motivated, and I wanted to be one of the best, when I got the carrot in under the time that they would expect, they wouldn't give that. I'd get promises in other companies.
Was it those carrots that kind of force you to going out on your own? Because
Basically,
there's so many times that you get a knockback, you think, this isn't for me, this is crazy.
Yeah.
And on the back of that, do you treat people better yourself because of that?
Yeah, definitely. I always think about the amount of times someone promised me something for getting to a certain point. And the amount of times that it never happened, and the thing that was for me on a personal level, it just really demotivating, because if you put all that energy, effort, and intent into helping someone else's business and driving yourself, obviously it's always about yourself, right? But when you're in someone else's organization, you're always pushing yourself for them in the hope that they treat you as one of their own. And
so if there's a small company, small building company, whatever, listening to this at the moment, your message to them would be?
Yeah, my message would be, look, firstly, it's really difficult because arguably, I don't want to taint everyone with this brush, but arguably the mindset of the current generation come through are very, they expect a lot and maybe not willing to give as much as maybe my generation or your generation. But to be clear, I don't want to taint, because I believe that there are people out there still driven and determined, as there always has been throughout all time. But I feel there's an abundance mindset and a scarcity mindset. And so by that, I mean, as a business owner, when you're a small company and you've got limited resources, more often than not, you're going to have a scarcity mindset, right? I'm limited with the amount of resources I have. I want to give this opportunity to this person, but I need this back from them. Otherwise, it's like a waste, right? And I think starting from that point, right, is probably where most business owners are always going to start. But realistically, I think you end up on the back foot immediately, because you have this, you're already starting with, I need something back from you, an expectation. And when you start any relationship or any endeavor with an expectation that you need something back before you've given, I think you start on the wrong foot. Versus having an abundance mindset, again, for a small company owner, and saying, hey, look, these are my resources. I'm being transparent with you. I'm willing to invest in you, because when I've interviewed all the candidates, you are most aligned with the culture and values of what I want to build. And set some clear expectations. So in the first year and a half, it's going to cost me X, Y, Z. And, I'm going to be putting all this time and effort into you. And the bare minimum is I just ask that you give me at least a year and a half back after that. And, hopefully I'm going to treat you well enough and set carrots that I will actually give you at different points. And if I can't, I'll always communicate. And then you've started that relationship and that and
it's development of trust as well.
Yeah, exactly. And then from there, like, the person can then decide, right, he committed to me, I'm going to definitely stay for 3 years, and at that 3-year point we can have a conversation, Like, I love it here. I'm going to stay. Could you pay me a little bit more? If you're being transparent with the numbers and you are actually not doing as well as you supposedly say you are, what the other person is going to be motivated to help you get those numbers up, because by them getting those numbers up, then you're going to be. But I think a lot of business owners like try to protect, including myself. I did it at the beginning. You know, you try to protect what you have. You don't want to expose all of these different things.
Yeah.
But so I would argue that an abundance mindset is a key attribute for people to have when starting out in every endeavor, and I think that it's very difficult, obviously, to adopt. But I think nature is our best guide for
Yeah,
showing.
I always feel that they should have some sort of business, incorporating all aspects of business, just a module on the apprenticeships, because most people, they leave the trade, especially in trades, they leave the trade, they're very good at what they do, but they can't transform that into a business, or they don't actually understand, say, the management element, you know, it's the E-myth really, but the element of it, and it can be a difficult journey. And I think that actually forces that kind of mentality that you're referring to, because they don't have the formal training at the very beginning.
Yeah, I think it's something that you kind of learn, because I actually did business at college, so I did go to college, and God, you know, I'm quite entrepreneurial to your point now, and we can go into a little bit more of that later. But when I did business, I was like, one, it was so boring, like unbelievably boring.
Yeah.
Two, the lecturer had never run his own business.
Yeah.
So, you know, as a young kid, I'm thinking, who's this guy teaching me all this stuff? He hasn't even run his own business. And three, it's just like, you know, cash flow this, cash flow that. It was just really unexciting and uninspiring. So even I think if the colleges did implement it, I think, to your point, maybe like a basic level of stuff in the trade would be helpful. But more often than not, I think learning out there in the world. So for me, whenever I have apprentices, I show them, I get them to do invoicing for call outs that they've done. I wait till like 2 years, 3 years.
Yeah.
But so this is the scarcity abundance mindset coming up again. So most people like would not show that they charge £110 an hour, because they might only be paying the apprentice £10 or £12 or £15 an hour, depending on
But then you
what
can
age
explain
group
the
they are.
overheads.
And so then when you explain the overheads and the cost of the van and the petrol and the rent and the utilities, and the tools that you're having to buy and the materials and in the insurances and the NIC, EIC, like there's loads. So if you show them that, then they have a better understanding, versus them being like, you're making £110 an hour and I'm only getting £10 of that. Of course, anyone without that understanding is gonna. But that's why it's about transparency. If you can, you don't need to open up all of your books, but it's about explaining. And so when that person understands, they then can maybe have the mechanics in their mind of how they can contribute more to how they could get a pay rise. Because if I'm an apprentice and I know that I'm getting £110, so it's like, okay, so if we on average do 4 call outs a day. So if I can increase that to 6 or 7, I'm more of a value to the company, right? It's like, yes, you are. Suddenly now I have an idea.
Relatable.
Yeah, it's relatable. And I have an idea of how I can increase my value to the company.
Okay. So just going back to you, we've gone through the apprenticeship. You've gone through the company. What was the next step, the electrical company? What was the next step from there? Did you set up your own company then, or...
So basically, I went and worked for various different electrical companies, one-man bands, bigger companies, commercial. I actually was very fortunate when I think back, I got into various different parts of the sector. So like, you know, my first apprenticeship was working with big, massive cables, schools, government buildings. So I really got to understand power comes in from, you know, the 400 volts power supply stations, and then goes into the school with these massive cables. So like my whole apprenticeship was weird when I think back. It like guided me all the way eventually to finally house bashing people's homes. And like I actually enjoyed house bashing because it's hard. And something through my entire life that I've always resonated with, that's helped me now on my entrepreneurial journey, is the harder something is, the more I've kind of, I wouldn't say enjoy it at the time, but the more I've ended up getting out of it. Because like commercial, for example, as you know, for electricians, it's easy. It's a blank canvas, it's a blank concrete box, and you're just running cables. It's all easy. It's repetitive. For me, that's boring. It's like, okay, it's fast, you can earn good money, but it's like, God, do I really want to be doing that, the same box over and over again? Whereas house bashing is like every day is different, lifting up floorboards, drilling holes. You never know what you're going to uncover. You're meeting different clients, but it's tough. The days are super, super tough. So after going and working with different people, I didn't realize at the time, but I was kind of standing on this little, I call a little mound of value. And same thing started happening again, the carrot and the stick, people promising me things and then not delivering. I remember even once for all the apprentices that think their lives are hard, the one guy I worked with wouldn't give me a van, and I would basically travel with all my tools. They didn't even have backpack tools back then, the little handles, no cases, no wheels. Had 2 bags, getting on the tube every day, starting in Tooting, and I could be sent anywhere. Limehouse, Regis, West London, North London. If I needed a ladder, I'd have to go there, figure out I needed a ladder. And then he had loads of little lockups all over the place. Then I have to get the tube, go get the ladder, bring it back. So, man, I went through it properly.
Yeah.
But essentially, same thing happened, and I was just like, do you know what? I'm done with this. I need to just do this on my own. I'd actually saved up enough money at the time to put a deposit on a house from all my work, and so I was just like, I'm gonna try and turn this into a business. So when I left, as every entrepreneur will tell you, for I had enough contacts to survive like 2-3 months. That dried up in 2 weeks. Then I thought I'd made the biggest mistake of my entire life, and just had to carry on. So it went from having 5 days a week to 4 days to 3 days to 1 day to then, oh my God, like I'm scratching around, and that's when you think, oh my God, what have I done? But I just persevered, started ringing people up, knocking on doors. That's when I eventually took on my first apprentice. After about a year of doing it on my own, one of my friends got in trouble with the law, ended up going to prison. When he came out, I was like needing an apprentice, and I knew him quite well when we were younger. And I was just like, look, I've got this opportunity. Do you want to come back down from Sheffield and join me? And he said, yeah.
And that was all domestic work?
That was all domestic work at the time. Fast forward 1 year later, I had 15 electricians, and I had this thriving electrical business that was predicated off. Electricians are known for being messy. We're known for being the cock of the roost. We turn up. We're always on time, but we always leave a little bit earlier. We expect everything organized and done. Again, not all electricians. This is what the industry supposedly perceives us. Yeah. So I was just like, I'm going to flip this on its head. I'm going to work 8 till 5 religiously. We're going to take 2 half-hour breaks. And twice a week, we would work late, 8 to 8:30 at night. So, and I ended up getting a reputation for that. So I'd ring people up and say, hey, I've got a team of electricians that we work 8 to 5. We're super clean. And occasionally, if you can give us access, we'll work late, which means we can really drive home the projects.
So it's kind of like breaking the mold, looking and setting your own standards, which you can market and sell, and be, as you say, grow a reputation for it.
Exactly that. And started getting a reputation. Everyone wanted a piece of us. Started getting the money in, and then, as any good subcontractor will tell you, another way of going under is actually success can strangle a lot of small businesses. Because you suddenly, this well-oiled, organized machine, you've got 3-4 electricians, you're planning everything perfectly. Then suddenly, now you're working for 6 or 7 different construction companies. You've got your old companies, you've got your call-outs. And I was doing this all in my mind, in my head, 15 electricians. Every 2 days we had to move somewhere new. And what ends up happening, by what I mean by your success, suddenly everyone wants a piece of you, and you're saying yes to everything because you think you can. You're hiring more people, and in the beginning, all the people you're being very careful and selective for every single person you hire, and then suddenly you got all this work. So you start hiring anyone. You don't vet them properly, So a culture that you've built can easily be poisoned by one bad apple. Suddenly people are leaving early. You can't keep an eye on it because you're doing invoicing, you're organizing where they need to be. You're still on the tools. You're chasing invoices. You're wearing like 20 hats. And without you knowing, your culture is just getting absolutely pulled apart. Whereas before you needed 2 days notice or a week's notice from all of your clients, everyone's just screaming down the phone, like, I need you here. Whoever's screaming the loudest, whoever pays, you go to. So you just end up losing loads of money.
Yeah. So with that, so anybody listening, again, it's very similar to a previous guest where you see the pound signs, you kind of get dragged into another. You could be taken on another project because you're on this one. The same guy said, come on, we'll pay you on this one. And all of a sudden, before you realize it, you're in so deep. Now the cash flow's struggling. And now, as you say, people are misbehaving. How would you, if you had that same situation again now, how would you approach that next time?
So whenever I answer questions like that, I always just try to think about people who are listening, right? So how I would deal with that now is completely different with the knowledge that I have. And I guess what you're asking me is to try and pass that across. But the reality is, even if I do, no one listens. You actually will end up
still doing the same thing.
Yeah, I'm sure someone told me, you need to think about organizing your time more. You need to get slots. You need to make sure you invoice. I was always very trusting. So one of the biggest things that, to your question, I would say, is make sure you focus on delivering the work that you say you're going to deliver, but also more importantly, cash flow, to your point, which is something
so
that we've always
terms,
discussed, is make sure that you're sending those invoices out. Because I always had this belief, like, pure intention, do good work, the money will come and you'll get paid. And so for periods of time, I would just go do the work, and I would expect when I send the invoice in 3, 4, 5 weeks time, they would just pay it. The reality is everyone is going through the same problem you are, and the bigger they are, the more difficult it is. And probably with them as well, they're managing cash flow. If it was a recession, if I was right at the time, who do they pay? Like they pay the person to be able to do the next part of works. And so, the advice I would say is make sure you get your invoices on time, no matter what. Define some time, either weekly or daily, to make sure those invoices get out, because cash flow is the lifeblood of any business. And I got stung a couple times where, 10, 15K invoices would be paid severely late. I'd have to take out credit cards to pay my staff or to fund materials, just things and stresses that you shouldn't necessarily have to go through. And I'm sure that's the same case for any sector across all.
Management of cash flow is a critical, fundamental requirement, but it's a painful lesson sometimes to learn.
I learned it a few times.
We all have, don't worry. So going back to your journey, so we're now in electrical company.
Yeah.
Where do we go from there?
Electrical company. So I got stung at the time. A client basically wasn't going to pay me £15,000. So funny. For some people, that's going to feel like a huge amount of money, that like it did at the time. For me, that felt like £1 million at the time. And it meant that I wasn't able to pay my staff and my accounts, and it internally drove me insane. Like, I felt like poison going through my blood. I wanted to kill the person. Obviously I didn't, otherwise I wouldn't be here now. But I just couldn't understand how someone could do that to someone who, like, I did the work, I did it really well, there was no reason not to, and they just basically knocked me, as you know, is a common term in the business. And I really struggled with that. Eventually, like I said, I took a loan, credit cards, to kind of get me through that period. And that's when I decided to, like, slow things down a little bit, take stock of actually what I had, start getting rid of all the poison apples that were in the business, and really look to start again. And it's the first time I actually realized, like, learning to say no, because there was 80% of the business at the time was creating 20% of the profit, so being a busy fool, and 20% of the business was creating 80% of the profit. So I really started understanding what business was about, started chopping out all the dead wood clients as well, and just got back to where I started, because you get caught in that hamster wheel. You said,
but
mine
that's a very important lesson, though, isn't it? Is you've mentioned it because you've seen the flashing lights, you've gone with it, but now, as you mentioned, then it's a matter of saying, hang on, let's take stock, let's slow down, let's get these payment terms in place, let's get on top of the cash flow, and then we can take one step backwards to move two steps forwards. A lot of companies, unfortunately, get in so deep, and as you say, credit cards, whatever, put a house up, and then it's too late.
Yeah.
So that's a massive lesson that people should just take a moment sometimes. And I know it's an old cliche, but spend some time working on the business. Don't get stuck inside the business.
Yeah, but it's so hard. I don't know how, even back then, I don't know, I guess in a weird way that some person knocking me was a moment to take stock and really understand that there are sharks out there, and that, needed to be take better care of the business ultimately. So then I kind of like reset the business, really thought about who it is I wanted to work with, started trying to figure out how to be more profitable. Because the other funny thing I want to say is, when I was on my own with one apprentice or on my own, I still think today it's the most money I have personally earned, which is crazy saying that, 10, 12 years into my journey now as a business owner. I bought my house, unaided, no help from anyone in London, which is one of the toughest things to do, even tougher now. And obviously I'm sure I could earn the same or more, but because I run multiple businesses, and any business owner will know, you try to pay yourself as little as possible, because you're trying to grow the business, and every pound that you don't pay yourself or waste is a pound that goes into growth.
Investment.
Yeah, it's growth. It's how I've always seen it. Which is why I think I've always grown so quickly, because I've always invested everything back into the business. So one of the things is, if you don't take your profit, obviously you don't have to pay tax at the time. So that's not tax avoidance, that's investing the money that you've earned back into the business, so you keep growing it. And that's how I've always operated all of my businesses, is reinvesting back into them.
How did we do the transition from electrical to building?
So basically started getting really good at what I was doing. I was working in almost every tier of the construction business as an electrician. So call outs, one-man band, builders, small kitchens, all the way to £100 million projects. And when I was in these projects, I was always quite quite personable. So I learned to form relationships with architects, interior designers, clients, contractors. So it allowed the business to thrive, because we had such a variety of work at the time. And working all of these different things, I've always been very passionate about what I do. So, we'd go onto sites where a contractor was really unorganized, didn't have a project manager. I'd go in there and be like, man, this is a shit show. We need to kind of like get involved and help. So I'd end up like steering the project, almost project managing from inside, because I cared so much about the client and the project and everything else. And then one day, one of my friends bought his flat in Chiswick with his partner, and he was like, "Hey, Russ, surely can you do the electrics on there, but can you also like do the entire thing?" There was like a little 2K kitchen and some other bits and pieces, and I was like, "Oh, do I really want to do this?" I was like, "But you've been doing it for other people free of charge. How hard can it be?" At the time, I'd always been thinking, how is it that there's so many issues on projects? If I'm moving 10 to 15 guys around multiple projects all in my mind, how is it that so many contractors can fuck up a schedule with 3 guys in a place permanently for 6 months? Like, I always used to be like, guys, how are you doing this, right? So I was like, yeah, go on, I'll take it on. So I ended up doing it, pulling all of, I didn't realize at the time, but I'd obviously been making loads of contacts, flooring guy, painter, decorator, because I've been making friends in the industry, and ended up finishing the project. They were super happy, amazing project. the flat ended up, it's in Chiswick Village. I think, I can't remember, but there's like between somewhere like 30 or 60 flats in there. The flat ended up selling for the most amount of money in the estate at the time. So it was kind of like confirmation that I had done an amazing job.
Was that the light bulb moment?
Yeah. Well, it wasn't that. It's just like, and I actually enjoyed it. I really enjoyed it, right? Because I think to my own journey, like I'm not someone who likes to get stagnant. Once I've sussed it out and figured something out, I kind of not jumping to the new thing, always keeping the other thing going and rolling, but like need a new challenge type thing. So that's how it started. I just was 80% electrical, started doing 20%. So started with like 10K projects, bathrooms, kitchens. Then I hired a little team together. Then it went on to 50K, 60, 70, 80K projects.
Actually, on that, when you say a team, from your experience, do you feel that getting the team to run the project in isolation and they report to you better than, well, now with the new government employment employers NI is high, but rather than have your own tradesmen, and in terms of control of quality, and what's your thoughts on that?
Initially, when I first was looking, I actually just hired two guys who were multi-trades because they could kind of do everything. I obviously could do the electrics, new plumbers, but the core skills were these two guys, Matt and Carol, that did predominantly most of the work. We were doing kitchens and bathrooms mainly. And then as I started getting bigger jobs, I started looking into what do other people do. And most contractors, you build a brand, then you win the work, and then you subcontract. You break it all down into packages: electrical, plumbing, painting, decorating, plastering, bricklaying, flooring, you name it, right? And then you put out. But I think one of the things is when you're in the middle market or the lower market, when you're first starting out, is like you're getting a various different levels of quality, various different levels of professionalism. So it was driving me insane because like I wanted to deliver really high quality all the time. That was my MO. And then you'd get guys coming in. This guy's a 7 out of 10. That guy's a 9. This guy's a 5. Someone who's a 9 out of 10 has a Barney with his wife, or something happens, in traffic, and suddenly his work drops to a 5. So it was just super inconsistent. So it was driving me insane. And then obviously I decided early on to put my name on the tin, and I was kind of, talking a big game from early on, like we'll do this and do that, and then people would let me down. So the plumber would tell you he'd be there tomorrow at 2 p.m. I'm not on every project myself. You tell the client, plumber will be there 2 p.m. Plumber doesn't turn up, doesn't text, doesn't communicate, whatever, and you're being let down. They don't care about.
And it's
plumber.
your name.
It's my name.
Yeah.
Like that's. So after a while, I was just like, God, this is like, I can't do this anymore. I'm just gonna have to take a punt. And I knew at the time intuitively that the reason why everyone does it the way that I describe subcontracting is what your profit's going to be. It's fixed margins. So I know he's 10K, he's 5K, he's 20K. If they fuck it up, it's not my fucking problem. You saw the scope, I showed you the work, you put the price in, that's your problem, right? And that's how subcontractors have to learn, like I did.
Some of the smaller subcontractors can't relate to that, can they?
Well, they soon will if they're gonna carry on in this business.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
because I'm always fair. Because if you've missed something that the client should pay for, I'll always help you to try and push at the time. But the long story was, I was just like, okay, this is driving. I can't do this anymore. I'm going to try and look at a different model. I'm going to try and build my own team, hire them all in-house, like I had done with my electricians, and try to do that. But the thing is, what I did know was they're all going to be on day rates, and there's not going to be fixed timelines. No matter how hard you try, if someone is being employed, they don't care. You can say, I need this done in 2 days. They're going to take 3 or 4, especially if you're expecting high quality. So I was like, we're just going to have to sacrifice my profit because it's the only lever you could sacrifice at the time, unless you wanted to turn into like a mini Hitler and be on every job, like, with a whip and which is impossible anyway. And so I was like, okay, I'm going to do this properly. I'm going to build culture. I'm going to build values. I'm going to do what I did with the electrical team at the time. And in the beginning, it's really tough. Someone goes there, they does a job, it's not good enough. I want a 10 out of 10. 9 is the bare minimum. And they would go do a 7. It's like, You got to go back. Goes back. Same thing again.
Actually, on that, how, in terms of, you mentioned culture, which is critical, but in terms of maintaining those standards when you are remote, did you sort of incorporate anything in the business? Did you bring in company meetings? Did you bring in anything to say, look, this is what we're doing? How did you maintain it? Was it you really running around saying,
me
come on
running
guys,
around.
come on guys?
Me running around, come on guys, sending. I'd set the first system I actually had was a WhatsApp group with each individual person. Then I had a WhatsApp group with the clients. And so it made things easy to forward things. Client sends a snag list. Who's that to? So client moans about something there. You just kind of send it forward. And then when I saw them, it's like, these are the levels. Give them uniform. Everyone had uniform so that they understood that they were part of a brand and that we were building a culture. And everyone else is finishing at 4, half 4, and they weren't used to it, and people used to grumble and moan. It's like, these are the standards I'm setting high standards because I want us to eventually kick on and get into bigger and better jobs, and the only way you're going to do that is by having a clear reputation that people are going to recommend you. And so it was really difficult, and eventually it was just like someone taught me broken record technique. It's just like, just keep repeating the same thing. You got to go back. It's not good enough. And I'm paying for it every time. And eventually everyone's like, I got to go back. Yeah, you got to go back. And then, the level eventually reaches a point that's acceptable. And then it was like, now, if you make a basic mistake, you're going to go back, and you're going to go back in your own time. I'm not going to pay for it because I've just paid for you 2.5, 3 years of you making mistakes. Yeah. So there is a clear, defined amount of time and money I've spent investing in you and this company. So if you're going to fuck it up now, you're going to pay for it. But you can't do that in the beginning, otherwise you lose the culture and the values. So yeah, and then from there, actually started building this reputation and this brand, and consistently getting a 7 out of 10, and an 8 out of 10, and then a 9 out of 10, and then getting into bigger jobs. I was all over Instagram, filming on Instagram. It was very draining.
Actually, with regards to the bigger jobs there, have you had a scenario that, from the lessons you've learned in the past, where you've had a big job, I don't know, £10 million job, we'd use that as an example, that you thought, oh, I think I can do this, but because of lessons learned in the past, you thought, hang on, no, let me slow down, let me think about this?
Well, what I actually ended up doing was just making incremental steps. So the team was always working on one level, and my mind was always projecting and marketing on the level above. And that's kind of how I've always operated. So we're doing 100K jobs. I'm already trying to prepare our literature, trying to prepare our company, trying to prepare our values that we can do 200K. And I'm out there pitching, we can do 200K jobs. Because I knew we could. I always knew we could. And even if someone would let me down, I knew I would jump in there and work 24 hours a day to deliver if I needed to. And that's kind of like the mentality side of things that I've always had. So that I always fell back on the confidence that I would always jump in if I needed to. So to your question, I always project, and even still now. So like now, our average project size is anywhere from £500,000 to £1 million. Starting from a 2K kitchen, that's quite. But I've climbed every step of the ladder, done incremental steps: 100K job, 150K job, 200K job, 300K job, 340, 400. And each at the moment, every 2 months, I'm getting into that next bracket. I do think I can make incremental, bigger jumps now from £500,000, 1 million to 4 or 5 million, because I'm running. At one point, I was running 24 projects, small projects, which was just, I don't even know.
They're as demanding as...
Yeah.
You still got all the moving parts.
It was insane. And again, making profits on some and then making big mistakes on the other. But I think that helped me grow the company as much quicker, because I was learning mistakes that take 4, 5, 6 years. I was getting condensed into this short period of time. But again, because I backed myself, I was always do the right thing. If we made a mistake, I'd always go back and fix it. So there's not, hopefully there's not a customer out there that could say that I didn't come back and fix an issue or problem that was caused by us through lack of one of my people not doing the right thing. And so then to your point of the where I think the entrepreneur journey really kicked on. So every successful construction company normally starts a joinery workshop. And so I was like, okay, I feel like I'm ready to do that. That's going to be the next step. Or remember, always thinking ahead. So I had an 1,800 square foot office in Mitcham, which I still do. And at the time when I had to take that office, you know, he wanted me to put up my house. He wanted a 15k deposit. He just wanted everything. So funny how the world works. And then when I wanted the second unit, basically just gave it to me. Didn't want a deposit. Didn't need me to put up my house anymore, because I'd proven my reputation. You know, paid everything on time. So another point to for people out there is it's always much harder in the beginning, and then once you suddenly get the momentum, things just fall into your lap, as it were. So I took on this space. COVID came. And it was like, I already signed the lease. I managed to negotiate 6 months rent free. And at the time, the workshop was going to cost me 200k. So I was about to take a loan, 200k, and that was going to be able to transform the space, but get all the machinery in. I found a really good carpenter who had experience, who was going to do it. And I'm just like, man, I'm not going to go up to my eyeballs in debt. Like, this is crazy debt other than your own home. To fund something that I don't really know or understand. I'm not a carpenter. And so I was like, okay, can't take that risk. That's way too risky, even though I love risk. So I was like, had this space, and what am I going to do with it? And an idea I'd always had was, you know, when I read books about very successful people in the past, that there always seemed to be this common theme that we all strive to accumulate wealth and riches and masses, like as much as we can. And then 60, 70, 80 years old, or when they die, they give it all away. And it's kind of like, why not start giving back, which I've always tried to do through apprenticeships and stuff along the way. Because, you know, I think having the journey that I did had so difficult to get anywhere in anything I did. I was like, oh, I would love to, the idea of trying to give back. So upstairs, I was just up there one day, and I was like, you know, I really love health and fitness. I play a lot of football. At the time, it was COVID. All the gyms were like these no-frill £15 a month, £20 a month, 24-hour gyms. We'd all been disconnected. I was like, okay. So using my skill set, I transformed this space into a beautiful, open, calming space. And I thought, I'm going to make a yoga Pilates studio, whatever. And I put one of my first proper years of profit, which I don't mind sharing, was like almost like 120k, the entire pot, into investing it into this studio. I was like, I'm going to give back. I'm going to put my money where my mouth is. You know, not just talk the talk. Make sure I walk the walk as well. And yeah, so initially with that, kind of just diving off a little bit, it's nothing to do with building, but it's a fitness studio. It's called RH Studios. It's based in Mitcham. We really try to empower and get people kick-started on their journey. So we've created a very nice, welcoming, safe environment for people who may have lost their way, overweight, recently became parents. And so we just kind of like our coaches. It's all coach-led. And we nurture people back in to aligning their mind and their body and giving them confidence. And it's something I'm really proud of. Yes. There's a percentage of it that is community aspect. So it's a community studio in terms of the giving back. So we do low rents for like the first Muslim ballet school in London called Grace and Poise. We also sublet to a church, sublet to a mosque. So we're not, we're really the entire community. So yeah, it's something that we give back. Yeah,
I didn't know that myself. So that's full marks. That's very impressive. With regards to where you are now, with regards to as we're kind of wrapping up now, with regards to anybody listening, if I kind of put you on the spot and said, okay, what are the 3 biggest lessons that you've learned that you could pass? So I'm putting you on the spot. I appreciate that. But you'll go away and think about it. Think, I should have said that. But if anybody listening, there's a number of things. One thing that I as I'm listening now, one thing that comes across massively with you is that positive mindset, and yes, we're all going to face hurdles, but it's not putting the ego before sensibility, etc., and being open to new ideas and new challenges. But in terms of a business owner, listening to this and thinking, okay, he's done this, he's done that, but what are the three kind of key lessons you've learned?
Okay, so I'm going to liken this a little bit to a couple of themes that I've kind of been talking about.
Yeah.
So the first is it's all about reps, right? You have to earn your stripes, whichever way you want to sort of turn what I'm saying into. But 10,000 hour rule, it takes 10,000 hours to be a master. I think a lot of young people, a lot of people just expect, you start the business, you do the name, you do a little bit of marketing, and suddenly it all comes to fruition. And to the point of part of my journey is like, no, it doesn't. There's going to be really fucking tough days, really hard days, and you got to keep going. To liken it to a gym, it's about doing your reps. You'll just keep doing your reps, even on the days that you don't want to do it. There were days I hated what I was doing when I was. There are parts of my journey when I was building both or all of the companies where I was like, "What the fuck am I doing?" I literally despise what I'm doing, but carried on doing those reps. So just to remember to keep going, and that, to build muscle, you got to do the reps to build that.
Yeah.
The second thing is, again, kind of tying it into the reps slightly, is a lot of people think that things just land on your doorstep. Starting any business, any endeavor, even as a single, an apprentice, eventually starting your own business, you need to market it yourself. You need to put yourself out there. You need to nowadays do Instagram. You can't just put one post a week and expect to get loads of work. You're going to have to put like 10, 15, 100 pieces of content out a week, every single day, consistently for months, if not years, to be recognized. And I'm liking that to the times that we're in now. Back then, it was picking up the phone, which I still think works today. Pick up the phone, ring loads of contracting companies, which some people do with me, send emails out, drop leaflets. Like, again, trying to liken it to the reps, you got to put the reps in to market yourself, to get yourself out there for your business to be recognized. It doesn't just even if you do good work, sometimes organic growth is the best, and I've grown organically, but it also requires that work to put in. And the thing that most the lesson that I've recently learned now, that maybe the old self would give you different lessons, but right now I would say systems and processes in the business, because I've just started a new family. My son's 7 months, and like it's one of the most amazing things for any human being. And obviously I want to spend as much time with my family. I want to be able to be present. I want to be able to do things. And as any entrepreneur knows, and any business owner knows, it's really tough. There's only 16-hour working hours.
Yeah, on that process and systems, because ultimately that's the only real difference between a small company and a big company.
Exactly.
And you don't have a business unless you've only got a job, unless the business can operate without you, and without processes and systems nowadays. And you've got so much IT and technology out there now to make life so much easier, say from when I done it and when you first started. There's so many software out there that can help you.
Look, I've got an ambitious goal. For me, it's not about the money. It's about the destination and the journey. So the destination is just where I want to go, but the journey is the part that actually I really love and enjoy. Coming on here today and getting to talk to you and sharing that with other people. And it's just really important for me now to understand that without systems and processes, I won't be able to get to this it's a financial goal, but again, the point is the journey of 10 million. I want to grow Russell Hewes Limited to 10 million. And when I looked at it, there's no way that's going to get there with the way I was currently running the business. It's just impossible. You need systems and processes, SOPs, to be able to allow myself to not wear the 20, 30, 40 hats that I do. You need to be able to delegate. You need to be able to pass those. But something I was really bad at, like I could always tell someone what to do, but it's like, you can't be in every situation every single time. So you need to create a process. This is how you send an invoice in this company. This is
I was
how.
just about to say that embeds your culture, your systems,
exactly
your
how,
way of doing things.
You need to record it. You need to write it down so that if anyone gets stuck, or when you hire a new employee, when you promote one person to another person, of course that person can train them, but then you're going to lose massive amounts of hours. So create the documentation so that you can sell.
Yeah, fast track it all.
And without that, I'll never be able to reach the goal. So,
well, you actually, just listening to you there with the three things you said, kind of summarizing, effectively is mindset, marketing, and systems.
Exactly.
They're three things that people need to
3 pillars.
really consider. Yeah, as you say, under the overall umbrella. And you've obviously, you're still on your journey.
Yeah.
So
I
10 million.
I would say it's only the beginning.
10 million. Yeah, I can see you having a number of income streams, and you will achieve what you want, if only because of the mindset. And yes, it's been a pleasure talking to you. It's been an absolute amazing listening to your journey, because as you say, coming from a different country, facing all the problems you encountered when you was at school, and having that determined mindset, and if you don't mind me saying, you got a hell of a lot that you owe your mother for keeping to your dad's promise and coming through. So just great listening to you, and I wish you all the best on your journey. Keep it going.
Thanks, Ray, and really appreciate you having me on, and I'm looking forward to listening to all your other exciting guests that you got coming on. I've got a question for you.
Oh, okay.
What is it that inspired you to start this podcast?
Good question. I haven't actually been asked that. It's really I come across a lot of small builders and a lot of tradesmen who have amazing ability in their particular trade, and they don't always, because of they don't have the full business modules on their training, and I can see the potential in them, but they can't see it themselves. So rather than have a podcast that was, this is a procurement schedule, this is how you do a CVR, this is how the cash flow works, I didn't want it to be too mechanical. I wanted it so people who have been exactly in their same position, and you've explained that on your journey, I wanted them to listen. And if somebody hears something about mindset, if they realize they're not doing enough on their marketing, systems and processes, you get to a certain point, there's a threshold, and you need to bring these systems in. And once they do it, so really, in answer to your question, it was really for people listening that they can relate to something that some of the guests say. So it's not about me, it's really about the person who's given me the life story, and hopefully somebody can resonate with one of the points you've made, or a lot of people can resonate with what you've made. But you said one thing earlier, and in my background and in my own trainings, and that if you enjoy the journey, don't focus on the goal, enjoy the journey, and the goals will come in time. Even if you fall short, gap in the gain.
Yep.
Don't get
and hopefully the money, right?
Yeah. Well, that'll come. That'll come if you're doing it right. Yeah. Unless you're going to use all your profit for another venture. Yeah. But no, I wish you all the best, and thanks for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.